Hello people of Earth. Yes, it's me again. Seems to happen often. Anyway, so I was thinking about, Insipid Ham's video or whatever her name is. Yeah, she used this, she read out of this book about this idea of perfection, evolution, perfecting. And that's such a bogus concept. Because if we look at it, complexity is the key word. Yes, we become more complex. But at the same time, what we really become is more specialized. Everything starts, niching, narrowing, becoming, gaining a real specific skill set. And in doing that, sort of becomes vulnerable. Just because they no longer have the general skills anymore. They're no longer, like a universal. Now they're specific to a certain make or model. They're just not they're not a part that'll fit anything anymore. And if you just had the rounded corners and the flatter surface or whatever it would be, yeah, they could fit the niche. But they won't fit, yeah, well, I'm just saying they'll lose their, what's the word I'm looking for? Their general function, because they've acquired a specific function. And that, probably most of the extinction, or a good part of it, in the evolutionary history, has probably been just because of that. Because then something can switch its niche and become the general part again, and take you down. It's almost like capitalism. It doesn't tend to create perfect businesses. It just over time, so they come and go, they come and go, they come and go, and yeah, certain basic functionality like the efficiency of the assembly line is kept as a feature, and any new player is probably going to have that functionality of efficiency, but otherwise there's very few beyond those solid things. Yeah, the basic nature of the game doesn't change, and so the nature of the game on Earth is, as Dawkins sort of points out, it follows this pattern, and the pattern is it makes predators that are a little bbit clever, fast, just good at knocking stuff down so it can be eaten. And, and then there's these organisms that have to, consume. There's so much energy in consuming all this vegetation that you have to create these organisms organisms are going to exploit all that available energy. And, but the downside is they're likely going to be slow, and they're going to be they're going to be vulnerable, and so they have to have some sort of mechanism, some survival mechanism of a rather prolific reproduction to balance against their predation, and that you'll always acquire these balances. I mean, when the evolution game is run in through continental drift, we have these separate experiments, Australia being the most dramatic, I suppose, and yeah, you get the same pattern is duplicated in terms of the niches that are exploited and what those organisms basically function like. It might even be true in the ocean. We have less of a blueprint of the prehistoric ocean, but you can certainly even see it with the idea of tyrannosauruses versus the meat eaters versus the grazers, in the age of the dinosaur, that they sort of followed the same kind of pattern of functionality. The same tool sets were involved, and that blueprint would have stayed in place if it wasn't for catastrophe, outside of its own lack of functionality. But it sort of does illustrate, though, that the whole dinosaur idea, the very large animals getting bigger and bigger, and that being a way of winning the competition just by sheer brute force, there was a disadvantage to gaining that size, because that size made you less capable of surviving the famine, the catastrophe. And so now the advantage would shift to the more versatile, the less eccentric, the less perfect, the less specifically designed, the less feature-rich organism would again have the advantage, or the advantage would again fall to it, and the whole process would start over again. So in a way, I'm not doing this very articulately, but the point is that it's this complexity isn't as refining as it appears, because over time it keeps knocking it's like it builds a house of cards and then knocks it down, and builds it and knocks it down, and it's only a very base few cards that survive the knocking of the down. And so yeah, there is a level of complexity that organisms have achieved, but like with the dragonfly, here you had an organism with a pretty good little brain, very functional flying ability, really a well-designed little machine. And it happened 300 million years ago, 400. And it's quite a brilliant, sophisticated, high-quality, mosquito eater. And then when you consider its life cycle, it has this very complex life cycle, spending most of its life underwater as a predator. It's incredibly complex. So it isn't about complexity, because it's had 400 more million years to gain more complexity if that was necessary. It's just about being really good, being really efficient at performing a reliable, sustainable function. So as long as there's mosquitoes, the dragonflies are going to win the competition as consumers of them. They're going to be more durable, and they're going to be more aggressive and more capable and more efficient at it than just about any newcomer that might show up. At least that's been demonstrated over time. They're just damn good at it. And so it's hard for anybody to get into that business. But I suppose that also creates some inefficiency, because it's always harder to take down the established player. Something that's got a worldwide domination. It would be very hard to make something that's spread across the world extinct, because some newcomer might be able to defeat it in one niche environment, but it can always come back. And so they're always going to be vulnerable to some variable that will change the circumstance, change the rules of the fight, and they're no longer going to be as capable, and then they're going to get beaten, and they're going to lose for good, because their population isn't spread across the world. So there is a huge advantage, just like in elections or something. The incumbent has the huge advantage, and it's the person trying to take that incumbent down, that has to be really, really on their game to have any hope. Because it's almost like it really is in some cases, you really have to kill it. You have to wipe it out to assure yourself protection against what might happen. Because maybe all it would take is one winter that's 50% colder than all the previous winters, and that might weaken you. And in your weakened state, even your semi-defeated enemy would have enough of an advantage to wipe you out. So it's really not a game that inevitably creates better. It just it establishes monopolies. It has the same flaws as capitalism in terms of unregulated, it will give power to things that really aren't the best. It will create circumstances where no fair fight can be created, and the inferior product will win because of a circumstance. Now when you get to like human intelligence, that just kind of blows the whole game up, which relates to somebody else's video. Yeah, people keep talking about evolution. Pyro keeps talking about it. Like we're still biologically evolving. And that is such an ignorant notion, in my opinion. There is no natural selection anymore since the invention of the condom and medical care. And there certainly isn't any human selection. I mean, we're not as societies deciding to finance the genetically superior. We certainly have a lot more poor people breeding than rich people. So merit of success isn't being rewarded. So it's almost an anti-evolution. It's we're almost devolving, not evolving. When you add up the fact that we, keep the feeble alive with medical technology, and basically subsidize the genetically inferior in their reproductive choice. So I mean, there's no positive evolution. There's no, like I said, there's no human selection and there's no natural selection. And without one of those, without some selection, there's no evolution. It's just I can't even say random, but it's just a meandering of form that will pass no test, no performance test, and therefore create no directional change. Anyway, but yeah, the fact that we did this language intelligence thing just breaks the whole evolution ball game, because now we're operating outside of normal selection in nature. But the downside is that, as I'm pointing out, I guess, or the argument I'm trying to make is yeah, we're incredibly eccentric and we have incredibly grand skills. It's almost like I made this argument before about gladiators. There could be a point where it's like basketball players, they get taller and taller and taller, and then eventually there'll be an advantage to being some other shape or size because they will be so eccentrically specialized that they'll have weaknesses. And there's great weakness in human character. So yeah, we're very complex. We've got this brilliant intelligence thing, but we've also got an emotional disposition of, a complete asshole. And so there's every probability that intelligence will serve us no good, that we will use it emotionally and end up just, knocking ourselves over. It'll be a suit of armor too heavy to wear. Hey, pup. How you doing? Okay, how you doing? Alright. Hey, you're a happy puppy. Anyway, happy puppy. No thorn in paw. It's very good. So anyway, yeah, so there's nothing, we're not evolving towards some sort of, the efficiency standard is survival. That's all it is. And it is made quite evident. There are things, primitive things, skunk cabbage, been around a long time. There are crude things that cover the earth. They're highly successful and have been successful for millions and millions of years because they are efficient to their purpose, to the niche. And that's the only direction. There is no the complexity for a purpose thing. There's just acquisition of sharper or bigger or harder teeth. There are tools, they do improve They do get more efficient over time, but they're just tools. And intelligence just happens to be another tool. It's another weapon that can be applied by organisms in the scheming game. And so far, we've applied it successfully, in that we've dominated everything. But there's every prospect that our eccentricity will not be durable, that our specialization will be our doom, because we will corrupt our ownership. Of our control will be ruined by our own unwillingness to apply the tool to its maximum potential. Something like that. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's a good subject. I didn't do very well, but it's a video, so we'll post it. Not one of the best, though. Till next time.